up on The Race, the first and only VP debate of the race gets underway in just hours. Tonight's face-off between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance, also the final chance for either campaign to change any minds. Plus, Iran goes ballistic.
No, don't want me.
200 missiles fired into Israel today in retaliation for the killing of the leader of Hezbollah. What the Biden administration and Donald Trump are saying about the attack. And an historic milestone for the nation, the first U.S. president to turn 100 years old. We look at the celebration today for Jimmy Carter. The Race starts right now. Welcome to this special 2-hour edition of The Race on Scripps News. I'm Chance Seals in Washington. We are just 2 hours away from what's probably the final debate of the 2024 race. But instead of the presidential candidates getting in the final word here, it's going to be up to their running mates instead. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz squaring off against Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, two sons of the Midwest. This thing starts at 9 p.m. Eastern. CBS is the host, but we're going to have it too, so keep it right here for the simulcast. Typically, the VP debate is more of a side dish, you could say, rather than the entree. But with Donald Trump refusing right now to debate Kamala Harris a second time, the Walz-Vance encounter tonight, it's taken on a greater significance. As for the ground rules, this is a 90-minute debate. The candidates are going to have 2 minutes to answer and respond. They get 1 minute for rebuttals. Both sides have also agreed to keep their mics on the whole time. So any stray comment, that will be picked up. There will be no live audience and no pre-written notes allowed. Let's go right there. White House correspondent Serena Marshall joins us now from the debate site in New York.
Chance, historically, vice presidential candidates are the ones who can get their hands dirty, get in the mud, and allow their presidential candidate to kind of stand above the fray. However, this election cycle, everything's been a little bit different, including this debate and expectations coming out of it. Normally, they're followed almost immediately by a presidential debate, which is why they say the VP debates don't really change the needle. They might sway people who like you or one of the candidates a little bit more, but they don't change the polling. This time, however, unlike elections going back to the early 2000s, it won't be followed within the week by a presidential debate. And that time, the presidential debate followed 2 weeks later, and even then we didn't see a big change in the polls. However, this time, these two candidates are likely going to be the last time they face off on a public setting before the national audience. And that is why both candidate sides are already downplaying expectations. Walz's team said that he performs better in a setting that is more off the cuff, unscripted, whereas they say Vance is used to this, coming from Yale. He prefers scripted settings. Vance's team, however, says Walz is a very good debater and that he will do well in this setting. But regardless of what either side is saying, whatever expectations are being set, the real goal for both of these candidates to reintroduce themselves to the American public who may have tuned out the conventions while also propping up their candidate and not messing up. Chance.
White House correspondent Serena Marshall, thank you, reporting from the debate site in New York, again 2 hours away. So let's discuss tonight's debate dynamics and strategy with former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. She is here tonight as a representative of the Trump campaign. Congresswoman, glad to have you here. So who will we get on that debate stage tonight? Vance the fighter, Vance the litigator. Who will we meet?
Well, I've spent a little bit of time with J.D. Vance, and I know that he's really looking forward to this opportunity to speak directly to the American people, share the truth about President Trump's record of success throughout his 4 years in office, and how he plans to fix what Vice President Kamala Harris has broken over these last 4 years in office. When you look at the difference between, for example, J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, I think J.D.'s done more interviews than any candidate in this race. He has taken every question from every reporter, tough questions and easy questions, whereas Tim Walz really, other than the joint CNN interview that he did with Kamala Harris, hasn't done that. They've chosen to keep him away from journalists like yourself and others, away from having to answer any questions, both about his record, but more importantly, about Kamala Harris's record. They're trying to pretend that she just came in off the street and she's got a clean slate, when clearly that is not the case. Both she and Joe Biden have both said that she has been with him making decisions every step of the way, with Biden saying just as recently as a few days ago that he has delegated every issue on economic, domestic, and foreign policy to Kamala Harris. So tonight is going to be the voters' chance to hear from J.D. Vance and have him speak to President Trump's record and the truth about Kamala Harris's record. And Tim Walz will have kind of the first challenge to have to defend and hold to account Kamala Harris for her record.
So, as you say, Congresswoman, J.D. Vance, I think he's done 100+ interviews. Some of them have been what he'd probably consider adversarial. And two things have really popped, probably not in a good way. There's the Springfield, Ohio issue, and then also the childless cat ladies. That will surely come up tonight. And I was thinking about that. You have spoken pretty personally about the heartbreak of unexplained fertility and the desire to build a family, be a mom. Are you comfortable at this point with the language Vance has used with women?
I've spoken to J.D. Vance personally about this, and I'm comfortable with how he wants to find solutions to be able to help everyone who's either trying to start a family and struggling, as my husband and I have, and those who already have families. I'm going to let J.D. Vance speak for himself on this issue tonight, as I'm sure, as you said, this question will come up as it should. Voters who may be undecided should be able to hear directly from him on some of these issues that they care most about and that I know personally, given my conversations with him, that he cares very much about.
Understood. Is there something in particular you would like to hear from him tonight on that issue?
J.D. Vance will share to the American people what he has already shared with me, which is how much he really cares and how much President Trump is committed to bringing about changes in our policies to help support families, to help support those like my husband and I who've struggled with unexplained infertility, in making access to options like IVF, frankly, more accessible to more people than anyone ever has done in any presidency before. My friends who serve in the military on active duty, they have no access to IVF because even TRICARE doesn't offer that opportunity to couples who often face one or the other spouse being deployed and other challenges that many Americans can relate to. Overall, I think JD is really going to talk and looks forward to talking about his commitment to supporting families and to supporting couples like my husband and I.
I know there are tons of Americans who are probably very grateful to have you talk so personally about this issue. So let's move on to something CBS found. The #1 issue voters want to hear about tonight is, this will not surprise you, the economy. Then you have immigration and abortion. They say no personal sniping. That's at the very last spot, 16%. Is Vance on board, as far as you can tell, with tariffs like Trump wants?
I think Vance will make a very strong argument for President Trump's tariff policy and how that will result in an investment ultimately into creating more American jobs and more economic opportunity for Americans. He'll get into detail about these policies. He is very well versed in them in a way that I don't think you've heard him speak about before. He and President Trump know very well how hard people have been struggling over these last 4 years and continue to struggle as Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have celebrated and patted each other on the backs about the success of Bidenomics. The reality of the everyday American's life has been very, very different. They can't afford as many groceries as they used to. They have trouble affording the high cost of fuel, high cost of energy and power bills in their homes, the high cost of auto insurance, the high cost of mortgage and interest rates. On almost every front, life has been more difficult for Americans under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. President Trump has a plan to address that. He's detailed it, and I think J.D. Vance will talk about that in greater detail this evening.
Let's finish here then, Congresswoman. In that same CBS poll on the VPs, Vance is at about a 5-point deficit when it comes to the perception of being qualified to hold this office. What story is he able to tell tonight about that readiness?
J.D. Vance has an incredible story. Those who've read his book or maybe watched the movie Hillbilly Elegy may have a little bit of an insight into that. But really, when you look at the hardship that he endured as he grew up, struggling with a mom who had opioid addiction, was raised by his grandmother, used the GI Bill just to get his bachelor's degree and was able to get a scholarship to go to Yale, and how he has used those experiences where even though he's been in the Senate for only 2 years, that should not be seen as a disqualifying factor. He is not a politician. He's not a career politician. He's lived through a lot of experiences that I think many Americans can relate to, or hope that their own children may be able to strive and achieve opportunities in the way that he has. It's important to have people with real-world experience. J.D. Vance brings his own set of skills to help support President Trump in executing the policies that he wants to bring about to, yes, make America great again, but really fundamentally get our country back on track where we can have hope for a future of peace and freedom and prosperity, which doesn't exist if Kamala Harris is elected as president.
Trump campaign representative Tulsi Gabbard, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. And also thank you for your willingness to share a little bit about your family.
Thank you, Chance.
Still ahead on the race tonight, we continue our vice presidential debate coverage with presidential historian Jeffrey Engel. Where does tonight fit in the greater American story? Next. And you can get all the latest updates online. The top stories follow Scripps News on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Threads. We're back in a few minutes on the race.
Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on. Yes.
Showtime.
You're gonna want to see this.
It's on. Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery.
Wow!
It's on.
Celebrity trials are like no other. You not only have the drama of what's happening inside of the courtroom, there's the drama of who these people are. Paparazzi everywhere, people just hoping to get a glimpse. It's something that we haven't seen anything quite like.
A strong showing for the case against Robert Kelly.
There's this balance between the pizzazz of celebrity and the seriousness of a trial in a courtroom, and Court TV gets to bring you all of it.
There's gonna be trouble.
Are you still there?
Let's have it! Scared? You the law?
Well, that's right.
I'll find you, and I'll kill you.
Now all I need is a fresh horse, a saddle, and a gun.
Welcome to the Race Weekend. I'm Joe St. George. It's time for our Inside the Race panel with our partners from Politico. There's a lot to talk about.
It's about reaching the voters.
This is so crucial.
There are a lot of people out there who are still undecided.
These are important issues that are resonating.
You can't just win, you got to win big.
Any given day, anything can change.
Elections are about the future.
We're coming to you from the Scripps News studios in Washington, D.C.
The Race Weekend, Saturday at 9 a.m., 8 Central on Scripps News.
It's really important for Scripps News reporters to live where they are reporting.
You're going to talk to people from all different backgrounds.
We do stories with people regardless of the political persuasions.
We're coming here as people, as your neighbors.
We know best what's happening in our communities.
And that's why I wake up every morning, is I hope I can deliver folks information so they can make an educated decision. I'm Forrest Saunders,
Ben Brown,
Jake Burns,
Rachel Louise Just,
Alex Miller, Scripps News.
Watch Scripps News, find with an antenna, or on your favorite streaming app.
1, 2, 3, I am proud to be able to be on the first ever HBCU gymnastics team. This is how we'll do it! To be able to show off my talents at a HBCU is very honoring.
Why is America paying attention to the race?
Because what happens in this town happens to your town too.
Here on the steps of the U.S. Capitol after a historic...
The decisions made in this house are felt in the heart of yours.
Every night on the race, we take you to the people, the policies, and the political points of impact.
We want to add some context around it tonight.
The Race, weeknights at 6, 5 Central on Scripps News. Watch with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
Less than 2 hours from now, J.D. Vance and Tim Walz face off in their first and only debate ahead of the November election. Historically, vice presidential debates helped maybe boost the national profiles of presidential running mates, but not necessarily carrying much weight with voters. So let's go back. 1976, the first ever VP debate was held between Republican Senator Bob Dole and Democratic Senator Walter Mondale. Significant events in years past highlighted the importance of the VP role. The assassination of JFK, Nixon's sudden resignation. Gerald Ford prioritized the importance of debates in the election process, given his, experience. So joining us now is Jeffrey Engel. He's director of the David Gergen Center for Presidential History at Southern Methodist University, and he's always with us on important nights. Jeffrey, both of these men are decidedly, I'd say, not in the mold of elder statesman, establishmentarian. I don't see a Bob Dole on that stage. Have we ever seen a matchup like this?
No, not really. I mean, I think Congresswoman Gabbard actually nailed it when she said that J.D. Vance was not a career politician. Of course, he's very young in his career, so who knows what he's going to do with the rest of it. But neither is Tim Walz. I mean, the truth of the matter is, this is kind of continuing a theme that we've seen in American politics creep further and further up the food chain of people making essentially a bonus, a benefit, a boast about their lack of political experience, essentially saying, I've experienced things in other places of my life besides politics, so therefore I must be able to do this as well. So in both of these instances, Vance and Walz, we're going to hear stories, I think, about people who lived everyday lives, if you will, before they got shown into the spotlight. Kind of the last person to try to do that as a vice president was Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, who, of course, was a governor. Yes, she had reached high office, but she really didn't have a whole lot of political backing and a whole lot of political experience behind her. And frankly, I think that showed up in the debate.
So is it possible to say, considering polling and all the historical markers that who goes in tonight with the wind at their back?
I still think that Kamala Harris has a lot of wind at her back from the fact that, she has really completely upended the entire dynamics of the campaign since taking over for President Biden. I mean, the truth of the matter is, we have to remember that vice presidential debates don't really move the needle too much. Frankly, vice presidents don't move the needle too much, but I do think they actually have a very subtle influence on the electorate in that the vice presidential pick is essentially the first time that we get to see the candidate act presidential. It tells us essentially how they want to have their entire administration, how they want to have their 4 or maybe 8 years in office defined, whether it's something new, whether it's something old, whether it's something that is traditional, or whether it's something that's going to be out of the box. So I think the impression that the American people will get from both Vance and Walz actually won't change in the equation, but it will actually solidify how those voters think about the principle, about the person at the top of the ticket, because this really was their first major decision, picking this person who's debating tonight.
That's an interesting point of, do they want presidential? And by that I mean, so many voters are dissatisfied with the status quo that they are very much wanting someone who will shake things up, whether it is calling people weird or whether it is, saying the old rules don't apply to me, as Vance has said, and we're going to do it this way to draw attention to these issues. So I'm curious what presidential means anymore. Now, we know that the two moderators, Margaret Brennan, Norah O'Donnell, no fact-checking tonight unless the other candidate does it. The moderators are not in that business tonight. Was that usually done in the past? Because some critics are saying, hello, you can't allow them to just get away with this. How was it done in the past?
It really wasn't done in the past, but for a really important reason, which is I think we've crossed an important Rubicon in how we understand, frankly, what a presidential statement or fact is. By which I mean, previously, we always expected politicians to spin the truth, to tell us their narrative, to tell us their story. And it's really hard to fact check a spin. What we've seen in this campaign for the first time in American history is a level of, frankly, dishonest statements, let's call them what they are, call it lies, untruths by candidates that are very, very unexpected for moderators to have to call out. Those are the only things that we saw in the presidential debate between Harris and Trump that the moderators were comfortable saying, actually, no, that point is incorrect. You really can't say for a moderator, that spin feels a little iffy, but then again, we've never really had the opportunity or the misfortune, if you will, as a country, of having presidential candidates who are so divorced from the truth.
Really quick, before we move on to Jimmy Carter, because I want to ask you about him, not many VP debate moments wind up in the Smithsonian. Do you have a favorite?
You know, I think everybody's favorite actually is Lloyd Benson when he was senator going against Dan Quayle saying, "Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy." But I actually think a more interesting one happened a little bit before with Geraldine Ferraro when she was the first woman to be on a presidential ticket as vice presidential pick for Mondale in '84, and she basically chided George H.W. Bush for talking down to her, for saying, "You don't need to explain to me all the foreign policy nuances of America," and really tried to essentially twist the gender dynamic during the debate.
Interesting. All right, there is that other milestone happening today, which we do not want to breeze past because it's big. Jimmy Carter turning 100, the first American president to ever reach that milestone. And Biden said Carter's one of the greats. It probably did not feel that way in 1980. So how has his legacy evolved over the years?
You know, there's a really interesting thing about the 1980 campaign that I think people forget because we look at the way in which Reagan won in a landslide. But if you looked at the polling data maybe 2 weeks beforehand, you would have said this is a really close race. In fact, Carter seems to be gaining ground. There's an argument to be made if the election went on for another 2 weeks that Carter would have perhaps pulled it out. So I think Americans have this memory of Carter as being a despised president. But the truth matter is America was in a difficult time in 1980. And it was difficult for anyone to try to win re-election at that time. By which I mean, I don't think he was personally despised. And he really has demonstrated in his post-presidential life the way in which a president can, in their aftermath, bring power and attention to critical issues, whether it's housing, whether it's free elections. I don't think if we start ranking, presidents based upon their post-presidential achievements, Carter is perhaps number one by a high order of magnitude.
Yeah, he changed literally many parts of the world. Jeffrey Engel, director of the David Gergen Center for Presidential History at Southern Methodist. Good to see you.
Good to talk to you.
And you can watch the VP debate right here on Scripps News. We're going to be simulcasting the whole event 9 p.m. Eastern. We're back in 3 minutes.
One of my favorite supplements is Cunol Turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support, and Cunol has the #1 doctor-recommended form of turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
I didn't hear anybody knock. Shall we proceed?
My boss is the best shot in the whole world. Isn't it exciting?
They call you the rifleman. Just make it good.
Saturday night. First you moved in, you banned cigar smoke and kitchen nudity. Oscar Madison.
Just doing my daily yoga.
Felix Unger.
You're not exactly a guy's guy.
Why? Because I use coasters? I'm an accomplished photographer. Perfect, let's start shooting. And I can make a pair of tap shoes talk. What do you say, boys?
Together, they're the odd couple.
Here, hold that. Oscar, is that coffee? I just cleaned the rug. Better not move.
The Odd Couple. Saturday starting 7/6 Central on Laugh More.
Give me something new. I want the real you. That is the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes, of course we can get you more.
Rex, go!
Angus MacGyver. You know that was fun.
Just give me more.
Bounce elevates and celebrates the achievements of HBCUs all year long.
From the classroom to the field, we are making history.
Bounce HBCU Yearbook.
I'm Maritza Giorgio, live from our studio in Missoula, Montana, and this is America Tonight.
Scripps News takes you ahead of the headlines.
We're reading between the lines there.
America Tonight on Scripps News. Find with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
You got us banned from being room parents? I have never been more in love with you.
Who wants to go nuts for donuts?
Show him your folding trick.
I'm not in the mood for your sheet right now.
That's gotta hurt, huh? You keep me coming back for more. Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on.
Yes, showtime.
You're gonna want to see this.
this on.
Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery.
Wow!
It's on.
His identity, a mystery.
Who is he?
His sword, lightning fast.
I challenge you!
His name,
Zorro! Zorro!
Zorro!
Zorro. Tuesdays starting 5/4 Central on Grid Extra.
For the second time in nearly 6 months, Iran launched an aerial assault on Israel. Today's attack, which involved nearly 200 ballistic missiles, is being called a significant escalation from the strike in April. The IDF says the question now isn't whether Israel responds, but when. The fears of a wider war in the region are growing. International correspondent Trent Murray is in Tel Aviv with more.
Well, Iran unleashed this barrage of ballistic missiles across all corners of Israel, really, including here in Tel Aviv. We've just returned to our live position after spending some time in the bomb shelter. The IDF has just given the all clear to people, sending out an alert on their cell phone saying it is safe to come back up, but telling them to remain close to their shelters in case there are any other sorts of attacks. Israeli media is saying around 200 ballistic missiles were fired. The Iron Dome system was able to intercept the majority of them, but it does appear there have been several impacts, including here in Tel Aviv. Our camera was able to capture one of those impacts, and there was smoke afterwards. As authorities were dealing with that, they were also dealing with a separate incident where a gunman opened fire at a train station in one of the beachside suburbs here of Tel Aviv. We understand a number of people have been killed. The authorities are saying the immediate danger for that is over now, but certainly the US had been warning Israel that this Iranian attack was coming, and it would appear that their timing was correct, and we are now just waiting to see how the Israelis respond. Several officials have told Israeli media that the response will be something like Iran has never seen before, and once again it would seem that this region really is now on the brink of all-out war, given the scale of the missile attack that Iran unleashed on Israel. In Tel Aviv, Trent Murray for Scripps News.
For the audience leaving us now, your local programming is up next, but remember, check us out on scripsnews.com/TV. If you're staying there, a lot more headed your way on this special edition of The Race, including how the nation's supply chain and economy will be impacted by the dock worker strike to the tune of billions of dollars per day. Will it affect this election? First, though, we talk with a Democrat and GOP strategist about tonight's debate in New York City. Walz and Vance on that stage together in just about 2.5 hours. Our bipartisan political panel next.